Good morning. I call the Policy Committee meeting August 21st to order. Second thing is approval of the agenda.
I would like to amend the agenda. Mr. Sides contacted us last week and would like for us to discuss drug testing.
Okay.
I believe at the high schools.
We'll add that to number 6 on the agenda. I would also like to add National Honor Society and graduation discussion because I saw it on the June 27th minutes and I just want to follow up with that. So we'll add that as number 7 and then adjournment is 8.
I do not feel comfortable with approving any or discussing any of the items. I do not have access to my emails, so I did not receive any of this information prior to this conversation today.
Okay. So we should table the whole thing or not? Are you welcome to have a discussion about?
Since there's 3 people, do we still have a quorum?
We do have a quorum. We
Okay.
can move forward with doing it.
Okay.
Right now you have a motion on the floor to approve the amendment.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Oh, wait.
2-1.
Okay. Thanks. Policies for second review.
Okay, the first policy for a second review, or the only policy, I apologize, is 2-29, participation by women and minority-owned businesses. Oh, I'm sorry, we didn't do the minutes yet. I apologize. I skipped right over.
It's okay. I need an approval of the minutes from June 27th and July 25th.
Motion to approve.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Now we have the 2-29. And this one, Ms. Sturdivant had asked at, I guess, the 2 meetings back for us to look at the level of participation in the goal section. Now, Mr. Strickland does think that we could put as an aspirational goal 10%. The problem that you're going to need to have before you can adopt this is that you're going to need to have notice in a public hearing for the policy. So my recommendation to you all is that we hold on putting this through to the board at this point. We look at scheduling a public hearing. We can also look at some language from some other districts that may not actually state the percentage in the policy and look at that as well. But given the need for a public hearing, this is going to be something that the board should probably talk about before we actually move this forward.
I would actually like to table it till next meeting, and then we can give the board something to look at before we set the public hearing, just to go back and look at some of the other school systems and what they do with this. I mean, this looks good, but I would like to just take another look at it before we do anything. So I need a motion to either approve it or to table it until the next meeting.
Motion to table.
Yes. Second. All those in favor to table it? 3-0. Okay, thank you.
Okay, the policies for first review. These are companion policies, so it made sense to me to put them all on together. There are some slight differences, but essentially the substantive pieces of the policies are exactly the same. The first one is 3-7, prohibition against unlawful discrimination, harassment, and bullying. There have been some changes due to that have come down from the Office for Civil Rights that we have incorporated in the draft policy that you see before you. The red language comes from the Office for Civil Rights and the North Carolina School Boards Association draft policy. There's nothing that other than what they have recommended that staff has recommended separately.
Okay, I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Do we have any program for bullying currently in the school system?
I'm not aware of a centralized program that's been adopted in full by the system that everyone is doing.
This would require training and programs for bullying in the school system. So
Right now, every school is doing their own program. So every school is doing their own staff training. They're doing their own, but it differs from school to school.
Yeah, every school as part of the school improvement plan is required to adopt a bullying plan, which includes training and the adoption of something that works specifically in their population.
Would this be different? Would a plan be different for employees versus students, or are we using the same? I know this one is for employees, but are we talking about programs in each school doing their own thing for students or employees, or they're using the same format for employees and students?
I would think that they would use the same basic guidelines and then do some differentiation. And Jared, you can jump in since this is probably more in your shop, but there would be some differentiation based on who the potential bully is and the potential victim.
And I guess why wouldn't we, and I get that at some schools you can differentiate some things, but why wouldn't we have something that's more across the board with respect to training and things like that at the school level?
We can. In fact, about a year ago or whenever that was, we brought forth a group that was
Right.
based out of DC that we decided not to move forward with. And that was going to be
It was highly controversial.
that was going to be an anti-bullying, anti-harassment program. Since that point in time, we've not done additional research on what that could be. I have a lot of ideas and programs that I've used in the past. One of them has been adopted by 2 of our elementary schools for the coming year, and it's called Capturing Kids' Hearts. And that's a national anti-bullying kind of root cause analysis that Unionville, I believe, and Fairview are really interested in implementing this year. So Jared can take a look and do some research, and I can provide some assistance. And if that's something that the board's interested in system-wide, I'm all for that. I think that'd be great.
I agree. I think we need to have something across the board.
Now, in
So
terms of
again, this is
staff,
capturing kids' hearts, so
That's-
I would assume that's around students.
That
and
is
we would
around
have
student.
to verify if that type of format would work for adults.
I've not seen it work for adults. I'm not aware of a anti-bullying program for employees, other than what our principals would normally do in their back to school early this week in terms of going through board policy. But in terms of student, we can certainly do some more research and come back to this committee if you'd like.
I would like that very much.
And our
And I mean, it's definitely something we can put into play for the next school year. And it can be in conjunction with the mental health and social workers and everything else that we have going on. And they may have some input into some stuff that they have used in the past as well. So I think it's a perfect time to consider a kind of all school program. Yes? Melissa, too? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
we have a great online platform that we're now using for staff training that has bullying and discrimination modules on it, and we
Okay.
can push those out to all of us. And they're specifically employee related.
And
Okay,
correct me
great.
if I'm wrong, Michelle, that is a requirement of all employees, correct?
Yes.
To take those modules.
And what's the name of that?
It's
program?
Safe Schools is the actual platform, and then it has different training modules. And we've pushed out sexual harassment to staff already. And I'll go through and see what we've done is I've reviewed each of these modules ahead of time because they're standard but made by the company to make sure they meet our North Carolina requirements and our board policies. And if not, we can customize them, and I'll go look through their bullying and discrimination ones and make sure that
That'd
they're
be great.
and we can push
So
those
is
out.
that platform under human resources? Is that required for all new employees or current employees or?
We do have a component of it that's onboarding. And so there's policies and training that are pushed out to all new employees. Then there are things that go out annually to all of our employees. There are certain policies that the employees are required to review each year. And those, we have uploaded those to those platforms, to that platform. There's our bloodborne pathogens that they get. There's sexual harassment and those things that go out annually to employees. So it does both.
So how do you know if each individual teacher or employee has actually done the module?
It will send an email out, and it gives you links to your individual set. Our risk manager went through each employee category and identified the trainings that are necessary for each job. And then those trainings and some are all employees get them.
Mm-hmm.
And the modules are pushed out. You get an email, you click on, you go into and it then will send, we can track who's taken it, when they've not taken it, if, and it will continue to send you emails saying you are overdue. Because I intentionally didn't take one to see what the process happened. And it was diligent in reminding me that I had not yet done it. And then principals can get a list of who hasn't done it. We can generate all that data.
How long have we had that?
We have one department has used it for a while. We have fully implemented it this year.
Okay.
These are typically all of the face-to-face trainings that during this week when teachers report back to duty that they're required to take. And I think to Michelle's point, this is a way to kind of streamline all of that and make sure there's consistency across every school and that everyone's receiving the same information.
And that they're doing it.
Which I think is great.
Yeah.
Okay. My next question is on page 4 of 11 in 3-7. Acts of disrespect is harassment and bullying. Is that part of OCR?
That's language from the Office for Civil Rights. And I think the may constitute language does allow principals to look and see what rises to the actual level of harassment and bullying. But yeah, that comes from the Office for Civil Rights.
Okay, page 6 of 11. In the second paragraph, 3 lines down, violation of this policy must, I think it should say must be reported instead of has a duty to. Must report such conduct.
Sure, you can change that.
Okay, in the next sentence, employees who observe an incident of harassment and bullying are expected to intervene to stop the conduct in situations in which they have supervisory control over the perpetrator and it is safe to do so. Why would we not have employees intervene on situations where something is going on?
Well, it does. This would also involve
the
employee,
qualifier, I guess,
employee, yeah, but
Yeah.
it would also employee. So it may not be either safe physically for the staff member to intervene, or if it's their, it's their supervisor harassing somebody else, it may not be. They may need to do it, kind of report it as opposed to intervening.
Okay. In D, consequences for students. Disciplinary. So this is in employees, but it's disciplinary consequences for students.
Wait,
Am I
where's
not-
that?
I'm sorry, same page down, but right there.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
Sorry.
You said D. Okay.
I did say D. Sorry, right there.
Oh,
I
okay.
know.
Maybe a
It is
student who's harassing
confusing.
an employee.
I know.
It may be a student who's harassing an employee.
Okay. Is the code explicit what we do to students if they violate this policy?
There are specific, consequences for discrimination, harassment, and bullying. Yes.
Okay. Okay. I think that was. Okay, good with that. With that, good. That's all. On page 10 of 11, the superintendent is required to evaluate the effectiveness of efforts to correct or prevent unlawful discrimination, harassment, and bullying. Will share these evaluations periodically with the board. What would that look like? I mean, I like the idea of it, but what would that look like?
It might be, when we're dealing with OCR, sharing out results of OCR investigations, those kinds of things.
Okay. Just kind of caught me, like, how would you?
Yeah, that's been there forever.
Yeah. Okay. That was all I had on 3-7. Does anyone else have anything? I don't have anything on A, 3-7A.
Okay. I do want to, I have, and you'll see that it more strongly in 3-7B. There was inconsistency between the employee chapter, chapter 3, and the student chapter, chapter 4, as far as the complaint procedures. In 3-7B was the sexual harassment complaint procedures. And then that was the only complaint procedures we had in the employee chapter. In the student chapter, we had 2 administrative guidelines, one for a complaint procedure for race discrimination and one for disability discrimination. It's my recommendation that we make one discrimination, harassment, and bullying complaint procedure, regardless of the type of discrimination, harassment, or bullying. And that way we have that in both chapters, get rid of those administrative guidelines and fold everything in together. It's very confusing for parents and the community and employees to determine where they're supposed to go and how they're supposed to proceed if we have all these different one-offs. So I did a lot of research, and most districts have just one complaint procedure for these types of situations. So that would be our recommendation to the board for both of these.
Okay.
But the change to the 3-7A is just to add some additional examples that the U.S. Department of State has in their policy, and it addresses some of the things, A, that we've seen, and B, some of the things like social media and those. And then another one that we thought was important was the kind of out of school, off campus behavior. And it makes it clear to both employees and students that if it impacts school, it may happen on your social media at home or whatever, but if it impacts school, that we can address it.
Okay. 3-7A, does any, first before we get to B? I don't either. Okay. In B.
Yep. And B is where you can
Right,
see that
the
we've changed the
complaint
title and
procedure,
we've tried
right.
to make it consistent for all of us. And you can see that I tried to add all of that language.
Okay. In A.
No, we're going to leave discrimination as a complaint procedure for employees. That would be the title of it. Just striking the sexual harassment language.
In 3-7, we added bullying by students, employees, board members, volunteers, or visitors. And then we define visitors. In 3-7B, Board of Education members aren't mentioned at all, board members. So do we want to add them to the types of groups of mandatory reporting, or
We can.
do you think, or we could drop it into B on page 3 of 9, sorry. All members of the school community. I don't know. I just noticed that.
Yeah, the School Boards Association, based on some OCR things, had recommended adding board members to that other policy.
Okay.
And it wasn't in this version of theirs, so I didn't necessarily throw it in there, but we could add it
I
to
think so.
mandatory reporting by school employees and board members for that
Yes.
A. Okay.
Yes. Or we can be with the other third parties, but I think we would be more up with the school employees.
Okay.
And then it would go to the. Okay, the individual believes she has been abused by any of the following. Okay. Okay. Wait, why did I write that?
We did not have an informal resolution process in the sexual harassment one
I like that.
because you're not allowed to in sexual harassment, but these other areas you can.
I like that. That was my only comments.
Does there have to be a 30-day timeline? Do we,
For reporting,
for filing a complaint?
that's pretty standard, just because if it goes much beyond that, it's hard to go back and get adequate and accurate information. And we want to give people some time because these are hard things to report. You want to give people time to think it through, but not so much time that
Is
we've
30
lost.
days too much, though? Is that what you're saying? It probably should be short.
No, I was just wondering, because I was just wondering about the time frame. I mean, because some employees or students may struggle for a while before they report it, and I didn't know if 30 days.
Yeah.
If we should have a time frame. I understand the fact that the investigation.
I think that people's memories start to,
Yeah.
or witnesses or things like that. I don't mean the person reporting, but
Yeah. And
because social media keeps a record, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So even if it was 60 or 90 days, social media would still, I guess it can be deleted, but if someone screenshot it,
Yeah.
then,
And that, but if it's a face-to-face kind of thing.
okay.
It does allow, in the first one, we can expand this for more if it helps, that it will be discriminated after that
Mhm.
based on the reason for the delay, the extent of the delay, and the impact the delay might have. So it doesn't say that 30 days and you're done. It doesn't
Okay.
shut the door completely.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you.
And 4-7 AB and A and B are the same as 3-7.
They are exactly the same, and there's some slight differences in 4-7B, but I don't believe there's much substantive difference.
Okay.
I will add the mandatory reporting by school employees and board members.
So this would be sending this to the board for the first review. So this would come back to us. So Candace, you would
Correct.
have the opportunity at the board meeting or at the second review to come back on any of this stuff. Okay. Okay.
So our recommendation, these go to the board for review at the next board meeting, which
Motion to send to the full board for review.
Second, all those in favor? Aye. Okay. The next thing on the list is drug testing.
So we had received a request from Mr. Sides last week to, that he has a strong desire to do drug testing or random drug testing for at our high school level. I think, was it Mooresville City Schools had recently, I'm sorry?
Mooresville graded school system.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so he wanted us to have a discussion at the policy level about entertaining that at our school level for high school students that and it would be random, but it would start with all of our athletes as they may be having physical contact with other students, and parking. We may not, if someone were to test positive, we may want to suspend, parking privileges for high school students until they did not test positive. So again, this came from Mr. Sides, so I'll let someone else speak.
And I think that, as I'm sure you have, we've looked at this a little bit, and there's pros and cons to this type of thing, of random testing. I know we do that for employees, correct? Random drug testing,
if they hold a CDL.
if they hold a
Yeah.
license. Okay. I guess we would need legal advice on this from the perspective of who can be tested. I know that there are Supreme Court decisions on this, so we'll have to do that at
Closed
another
session.
time in closed session. But this is just a preliminary discussion to kind of get everybody thinking about it and bringing it back at the next meeting to have a little bit further discussion on it. I know we're kind of throwing it out at people right now. Again, Gary Sides asked us to place it on the agenda. So I believe that right now there's not 9 school systems in the state of North Carolina that do it, all much smaller than our system.
What school systems? Can you share with us the school systems that are?
Mooresville is, Lincoln County, I don't know the other ones.
Yeah, so I think, Michelle, if you could, do a little bit of research for us. And Jared, and, who do we use for our CDL? Do we use, find out?
Use
would we
Ahmed,
have to
don't we, Jared?
contract?
We use Carolina Ahmed. They're our provider. They do our workers' comp. and
Carolina who?
Carolina Ahmed. It's on Old Charlotte Highway. They manage our program where we test for DOT and for the for people who drive fleet vehicles. If you drive a county-owned vehicle, if it post-accident testing, and then we do have probable cause testing too if we believe someone or reasonable suspicion. So, but Carolina Ahmed manages our entire program. They do the random nature of it. They bring it out. If someone's out, they add another person to it. So.
I will share with the committee, several months ago, last spring, I received a phone call from the sheriff, and he had some concerns about drug use within our high schools and in our parking lots, and with among some of our athletes. And he asked for us to take a look at this too. So I know Sheriff Kathy felt like there was a very strong reason for us to take this into consideration. And if we're the ones handing out parking passes and we know, we have reason to believe that students may be on our property that may be under the influence, we may want to at least look into this and do some research.
Do some research, definitely. The thing that I saw quickly was that it's more than just student athletes, it's extracurricular activities. So that would include band, student council,
All clubs.
everything of that types too. So, sorry, just wanted to add that. And parking, yeah. Again, we'll need legal advice. But
We'll be glad to do the research and bring whatever we can find out back to this
So
committee.
at the next one, we'll have a closed session as well to talk about it.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, number 7, National Honor Society and graduation. We had talked at the June meeting about trying to, let's start with graduation, to try to make things a little bit more even across the board of how we did our graduation exercises based upon some observations in the graduation. So that stuff is moving forward.
Yes, and Dr. Breedlove can comment on the details of that.
Okay.
Hi, good morning. Yes, working with Mr. Baisden to put a team together of high school principals. And what we would like to do is take a look at the graduation programs and have some sort of guidelines on that program so that all of our programs across the district look and feel the same, no matter what school that you're at. And then the second item on graduation is facilities. I know that principals at our last meeting that we had with them were drawing names out of the hat on who gets to go in and where at what times, but such as Cabarrus Arena and some other places. So they are working on that. We would like to see all of our schools have an indoor facility, and there are 2 schools that we are working with to try and secure that indoor facility for graduation, just because of the time of the year, the heat, and health concerns that are associated with those conditions when it's outside.
Okay. What about the addition of valedictorian and salutatorian?
We are still looking at that. We have not made any movement on that of securing that at this time, but we will be working on that over the next several months as we get into the school year.
I thought that was decided, that we were adding it.
We'd like to move forward with that, but I think what he's referring to is process in terms
Okay.
of getting to the point where we can, the timeline, the logistics, all of the configuration of when do you know who those individuals are going to be.
Okay.
But I've said publicly, I'm a fan of honoring vows and sals, and I don't have an issue with that. So
Okay.
Sorry, I wasn't clear on that. Yes, we
That's okay.
are going forward,
Okay.
but just getting our counseling staff up to speed, our schools on how does those selections, what is the math behind it, all of that goes into it, and how are we going to communicate that out to our schools?
Awesome.
You mentioned 2 schools in regards to the indoor facility. Which 2 schools were you referring to?
Monroe High School and Forest Hills High School. Those are the only 2 schools that in our district, that high schools that have a outdoor graduation ceremony at this time.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Okay.
So
I'm
when
sorry.
you mention programs, does that include more consistency with our chords? And because I know that some schools have chords and other schools have different chords, and some schools don't allow certain chords. So when you mention programs, can we please allow all students to wear chords to represent their 4 years in high school?
Yes, I think that's part of the dialogue with principals about that consistency across the board and who allows cords, who does not allow cords, and just to make sure that all of our students, no matter what school that they're at, they have that consistency and same opportunities as other students across the district.
And I want to be clear, I'm not talking about eliminating any cords. I want to make sure that students are able to celebrate their day and wear the cord that they have worked and earned, and that no cords are being removed from anyone.
Yes, ma'am. And a lot of those, depends on obviously the school, but those are all academic related or club related. And so having that consistency of what the definition is and making sure that we are living by that definition.
Right.
Thank you.
So if the club exists at a high school and there's a cord for it and other high schools use it, it will exist at all 11 of our high schools.
Perfect.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The other thing was National Honor Society, just following up. We've set a standard in the county for National Honor Society.
Yes, at our last high school principals meeting, one of the biggest challenges that we always face is getting all the schools on board with the same agreement across the board, especially when it comes to things like Beta and NHS. And a miracle did happen. We did all agree that 4.0 weighted would be the consistent GPA guideline across the entire district. And so we are excited to have that and push that out to our students moving forward from this day forward. Actually, we've already been working on that. Keep in mind that is a big change for our school system, and schools were all over the place on what they did. What we don't want to have happen as we move forward with 4.0 weighted is that students are left out because of miscommunications, things that may have gone out, and all of a sudden you thought that you had the opportunity, and all of a sudden we take that away. We don't work in that business. That's not what we do. So we will honor whatever had gone out if it was less than a 4.0 weighted, to make sure that those students are not penalized.
Right.
At
What
this point.
happens with the schools that sent out stuff for National Honor Society in the spring, in May, June, or sent them out before the principals were notified of it?
We are ensuring that under these new guidelines that any student, basically that message now is going back out to make sure that we didn't miss any students and they weren't left out.
Okay.
They were just trying to get ahead of the curve, so to speak, so that they weren't forgetting or just wanted to jumpstart. And obviously, sometimes when you do that, it may,
Yes.
when there are changes and getting those communications out, that causes a problem. And so we are rectifying that, getting that information out to all students so that nobody's left out.
And I know that everybody's busy right now, and I'm not saying right now, but all the high school websites need to be changed too
Okay.
for National Honor Society.
Yeah, we have teachers and counselors that have come back and didn't realize that change had gone in. And
Yeah.
so we are working to make sure that everybody understands what the new guideline is for NHS, and making sure that all students and families are communicated with. And moving forward, 4.0, though, will be one of the guidelines for entrance into National Honor Society.
I'll just comment. First, thank you for taking care of this. Our high schools across the county range anywhere from a 3.4 to a 4.3 and everything in between for the exact same club. And so I am thankful that we're going to pull this together and be consistent for all students, no matter what side of the county you live on. So I think this is a really good move for Union County Public Schools and for our students to be celebrated for their hard work. And I think this is a great target for National Honor Society, given that the decision a year ago was 3.5 for Beta Club. So I think this is a really good improvement for our high school students. So thank you.
Thank you for helping kind of bring that to light. You know, a lot of times we work so hard on the work and you don't realize the inconsistencies until you have that 30,000 foot view and see that. So this has given us an opportunity to bring that. So thank you.
Thank you. Nothing else on the agenda, so I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, all those in favor? Aye.
Okay.